are going to explain to you what laws they were inspired by and how the government of Cristina Kirchner and Daniel Scioli violated the current laws in July 2015 to intern me with deprivation of liberty for 2 months, declaring me forcibly and illegally disabled. As we had previously told you, Gustavo Darío Galarza had filed complaints during the period of the arrival of the U.S. Ambassador Vilma Socorro Martinez from September 2009 to the present. In the provincial courts of San Martin in 2011, and in Comodoro PY as of February 2013, there came a time when on July 10, 2014 I sent a document letter to the National Executive Branch pen of Cristina Kirchner, to its headquarters at Balcars 50 Cava, 47,072,037.06, notifying Cristina Kirchner of her crimes and the complaints that her pen and its security and intelligence bodies of the national and provincial state had. Why can't Cristina Kirchner stop taking responsibility? Because starting in 2009, Ambassador Vilma Socorro Martinez, sent by the U.S. government, landed in Argentina to finish off Gustavo Galarza. With the cases of pedophilia invented by the U.S. government, as we previously told, the cases of Annabella and Lorena. The Annabella case was invented by the U.S. at the end of September or beginning of October 2007 between the U.S. Embassy, President Nestor Kirchner with the CEOs of Holding Clarin and La Nación, as we demonstrated with the Louis Vuitton Spring-Summer 2008 video, September 2007, where U.S. Vogue tells the world that they created the Annabella case. Since September 2006, I worked at Papels PM. PM is the result of the union of the U.S. government, President Nestor Kirchner, the Holding Clarin and La Nación to have me under control in that company where Holding La Nación were shareholders, and use me when they want. All this that we conjecture and that there are archives of all this in London, because the U.S. government is it because, underhandedly, it tells its NATO partners that they are coming to help the miners and put an end to Gustavo Galarza. I went to Uruguay, and to Brazil in June or July 2010, to find out who owned the satellite. They let me know in Curitiba, Brazil, that it was the U.S. government. The U.S. government wanted me to work for them, forcing me to do stupid things, traps. No, it is the U.S. government, the most important in the world. If U.S. government couldn't get me out in Argentina, they could have taken me in Brazil or Uruguay. But the U.S. government didn't want to take me out and he doesn't want to take me out alive. And why are the responsibilities of Cristina Kirchner? Cristina does all the work. Her government does all the work to hide that it is them. Why? Because the satellite violates national and citizen sovereignty. Yes or yes, it is the U.S. government. Yes or yes, the responsible party is the national government. In all the complaints that Gustavo filed on Thursdays, they were made because they forced him to go out on the street to resolve the cases invented by them. Because the Argentine government harassed Gustavo so much, with the different cases that harassed him or the different topics, they made him go out on Thursdays, as they never resolved anything, and also when Gustavo returns home on his return they always continue harassing and threatening, stealing and sabotaging his property and his house. How you view YouTube in Spanish. In complaint 1372 15ths and 12,369 15ths in the courts of Judges Ariel Lijo and Bonadio contemptuously, I collected complaints were presented to the Ministry of Security of the Nation MSN, to the Buenos Aires Ministry of Security MSBA and 911 of the police local, where Judge Ariel Lijo's complaint is. It is told how Gustavo is in the federal capital and how the federal police chased Gustavo down the street, with whose patents they used as covert messages. The complaint 1372 15ths. It was filed on March 5, 2015. Who was the head of the Argentine Federal Police PFA, the National Executive Branch and the Ministry of National Security MSN? In those years, the Cava Metropolitan Police did not exist. Now, they do exactly the same thing. Both the PBA police and the AFI are side. They put cars to send instructions and threats. They said me, I'm going to cut off your electricity with Edenor, the cable with the municipality's cranes and the neighbors' trucks with ladders. Ambulances to go to the San Miguel Clinic, or to Carrillo, with logos that say vital and go here. Companies in front of police station number 2 of Palvarin, and the municipality of the Argentine Malvinas, with citizen control. I remember that one day, I left on a Thursday and went to Cava. When I came back the neighbors put a TV in the corner for me, with a speech by Cristina Kirchner. When I went to enter my house they had stolen the small front gate. Gustavo, what did he do? I went and denounced the Quirogas and all the neighbors, because it was in broad daylight, for having stolen the gate. Where Gustavo reported him, personally at police station number 2 of Los Polvorines. This is so that you can see the false actions in the police actions, the summary that they gave to the civil judge of the 2015 internment. According to the laws, the police summary is false. There is fraud on the part of the Buenos Aires Police PBA, of Alcides, of all the neighbors, and of the Ministry of Security of the Nation MSN, the Ministry of Security of the Province of Buenos Aires MSBA, and the civil judge involved in the internment and who established the disability standard. The Buenos Aires Police, from the Polvorines police station, the same one that intervened using illegal force in my detention, who justified handcuffing me with a false nerve nervous attack and my ignorance of the arrest. Just as I personally went to report the theft of the gate, I called 911 because this was an intifada, due to the neighbors' whims of throwing stones, a shower of stones. 2 or 3 times I called 911, and the PBA police came to stop the Quiroga criminals. They were all accomplices. This helps you imagine what the actions were like with which they completed the police summary. The actions of Alcides, the neighbors and the judge. Alcides lies because he works either for the provincial state or for the national state. Alcides said he worked for the federal police PFA. As I told you, Alcides was denounced by me, prior to his actions, to make my relatives believe that I was angry and that I was bothering my neighbors. Just as everyone had recurring complaints every time I went to Comodoro Pi. Mari, the Quiroga, Alcides, Estella, those who are there in front. Alcides has a complaint during the 2013 legislative elections. The table president did not let me go in to vote because I went with my bag where I had all the judicial complaints. So when I returned, immediately at approximately 8 a.m., because since they didn't let me vote, I immediately returned alone and the street was empty along Darreguera, half a block from Pelagio Luna. Alcides and a neighbor wanted to incite me into a fight with a neighbor in the street. I reiterate, Christina, with your violent fool. They always resort to the same thing. To violence, they provoke violence to blame me. Alcides and a neighbor incited me to fight in the street. I didn't give him room because since I was monitored I knew it was a trap. Surely they were going to use that as an excuse for me to bother them. Besides, I am not violent and I am not stupid either. I returned home and on the first Thursday I reported it to Alcides and the neighbor in Comodoro Pi, and they didn't let me vote. Then I had to go to the electoral board of the federal capital to justify my vote. So I investigated. They used for my internment, Dalmacio Velez Sarsfield Civil Code 1869, Law 340, which was reformed in 1968 and at the same time the Public Health Law of September 20, 1983 before the de facto president left Bignon and signed by him. Before Bignon goes and Democratic President Raul Alfonsin takes office. The Public Health Law 26657 of 2010, which searches for antecedents of when it was used. The law was regulated as of May 2013. Enacted in 2010 and regulated by the national government of Cristina Kirchner in May 2013. Since August 2010 I arrived at this house, the neighbors, the police of the province of Buenos Aires PBA and the federal police PFA. They made it clear to me that if I did not follow their directives they were going to kick me out of the neighborhood. The CIA and the national government used the side state intelligence service and the military intelligence of General Cesar Milani. They handled themselves as if they were in the dictatorship, ignoring the regulations of the Public Health Law 26657 of 2013. They were based on the Declaration of Insanity of Article 144 of the Civil Code of 1869. Not even the Public Health Law of 1983, Law 22914, recognized dementia. In Article 144 of Law 22914, Paragraph 5, of the furious madman who bothers the neighbors is left out. The Intelligence Law 25522 and first expires after a year for the letter to document to Cristina Kirchner. They falsify the summary of Alcides, of the Buenos Aires Police PBA, and the civil law that replaces the Civil Code Law 340 of Desfield. It is the new Civil and Commercial Code of Law 26994 of October 8, 2014. In the first days of July 2015, Gustavo Galarza began hospitalization for 2 months. The government falsely makes it believe that the Public Health Law 26647 of Democracy came into force with the Civil and Commercial Code of Democracy in August 2015. On August 1, 2015, the new Civil and Commercial Code, the current one in force, comes into force. That CTD made a summary video last week. All the pre-existing laws, they always say that the insider has to have a lawyer, something they never did with me in 2015. The difference that in Civil Code Law 340 of 1869 it speaks of insanity, in Law 22914 of 1983 that changes. All articles that talk about dementia are outdated. Public Health Law number 22914 regulate the confinement of people in mental health facilities, public or private, and of chronic alcoholics and drug addicts in appropriate facilities, also public or private. Areas of application. Hospitalization cases. Article 1 The internment of people in public or private mental health or treatment establishments for those affected by mental illness, chronic alcoholics or drug addicts will be admitted A. By court order. B. At the request of the interested party or his legal representative. C. By order of the police authority in the cases and with the precautions established in the second paragraph of Article 482 of the Civil Code. D. In case of urgency at the request of the people listed in Sections 1 to 4 of Article 144 of the Civil Code. There we are going to move on to Article 144. Art. 144. Those who can request a declaration of insanity are: first, any of the spouses not personally separated or legally divorced. Second, the relatives of the insane. Third, the Ministry of Minors. Fourth, the respective consul, if the insane person were a foreigner. Fifth, any person from the town, when the insane person is furious, or bothers his neighbors. They were inspired by this Article 144 to carry out the fraud, which dates from 1869. Dementia no longer exists, so as the judges say, if we have to look at the grammar, dementia no longer exists, as I showed you in Law 22,914 of 1983. Dementia no longer exists. But they used these provisions. They used the idea that the PVA police had rights over Gustavo Darío Galarza, and Section 5 of Article 144 of the Civil Code of 1869. Fifth, any person in the town, when the insane person is furious or bothers his neighbors. It does not exist because insanity no longer existed as a legal standard. Already in July 2015, Public Health Law 26,657 of 2010, voted by Congress and regulated in May 2013, came into force and regulated. Since everything is illegal, they protect their actions as illegal, false and systematically violating the law. Whatever the law, it is a violation. Why? In the summary, the judge must collect all the summaries, and in the Buenos Aires police summary there should have been all the complaints of Gustavo Darío Galarza that we told you previously. All of Comodoro P. Wide's prejudicial complaints should have been included in the civil judge's summary. Gustavo Galarza, and Gustavo Galarza's background, why the supposed patient may be dangerous or may have a criminal record, or you may be addicted. The judge does not know if he was an addict. In the normal course of a judge, he does not know if Gustavo Galarza is an addict, a criminal, or has an illness. Carrillo Hospital knew it was violating public health law, and that it was illegitimate deprivation of Gustavo's freedom. The judge had until the 6th day to notify the health facility, if he does not notify the hospital. Because hospitalized people can be voluntary or involuntary, when neighbors and anger are used, the hospitalization can be voluntary or involuntary. When the person interned is involuntary, the judge had until the 6th day. If after the 6th day the permanence of the internment was not notified, the internee through his legal representative can request expulsion and let them take him out of the hospital. Because their idea is always fallacious, a hospitalization for a mental health problem, for stress, for anger, whatever it may be, will not necessarily lead to a prolonged hospitalization and will not necessarily end in a disability. All the laws say it. They kept me for 2 months, because they didn't get what they wanted from the start, that I ended up in an addict farm. In its maximum according to the laws, the Civil Code of Law 340 of 1869 speaks of the ministry of minors, insane people and addicts. Then they update the laws. But a disabled person is considered a minor, at the same level as a minor. The minor has a higher standard of protection than a disabled adult. But both the minor and the disabled have a higher standard of protection than any ordinary person. The judges, the prosecutors, the state and the police know that. They kept me for 2 months because to keep Gustavo longer, the judge or the hospital must justify it. As Gustavo tells them, everyone is monitoring Gustavo through the satellite. Everyone knows that Gustavo did not have any illness. He had neither anger nor nerves. He is calm in the hospital. They only feed him and medicate him. As we told you, the police wanted to send Gustavo to an addict farm, because the situation in an addict farm is much worse and the hospitalizations are prolonged. They wanted to put me in an addict farm to keep me hospitalized for a long time and turn me into an addict and criminal or kill me by overdose. Gustavo Galarza's disability is easily declared null. Why? The events carried out by the Buenos Aires Police PVA, Alcides, the neighbors and the civil judge were carried out by fraud. Civil and Commercial Code of the Nation, Law 26,994. Chapter 3. Fraud is a vice of the will. Article 271. Malicious action and omission. Fraudulent action is any assertion of what is false or dissimulation of what is true, any artifice, cunning or machination used to carry out the act. Willful omission causes the same effects as malicious action, when the act would not have been carried out without reticence or concealment. Article 272. Essential fraud. Fraud is essential and causes the nullity of the act if it is serious, determines the will, causes significant damage. Article 275. Responsibility for damages caused. The author of the essential or incidental fraud must repair the damage caused. The party that at the time of the celebration of the act was aware of the fraud of the third party is jointly and severally liable. In this case, all those involved commit fraud. Chapter 4. Violence is a vice of the will. Article 276. Force and intimidation. The irresistible force and the threats that generate the fear of suffering a serious and imminent evil that cannot be counteracted or avoided in the person or property of the party or a third party, cause the nullity of the act. Article 278. Responsibility for damages caused. The author must repair the damage. The party who, at the time of the celebration of the act, was aware of the irresistible force or threats of the third party is jointly and severally liable. Since I moved to this house in August 2010, I have suffered threats from the neighbors, the federal police and the Buenos Aires police, that if I did not follow their directives they were going to kick me out of the neighborhood.